Hi, my name's Hannah and this is my video portrait of my learning during the English intensive. I now feel comfortable and confident to address the teaching standards 1.3, 1.4 and 2.4, working with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students and students from diverse cultural, social and linguistic backgrounds. And I'll be talking more specifically about working with EALD students and Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students. So I think in the Australian classroom, we need to, as a future educator, embrace linguistic diversity and look at the range of students that are coming into our classrooms as bringing much cultural capital and all these assets into the room that we can draw upon as teachers. So I'll be talking a little bit more about that and how excited I am to work with all these different students. To begin with, I'll talk about working with Aboriginal students and privileging Aboriginal knowledges. Late last year, I was fortunate enough to go up to Yalata and Oak Valley Aboriginal community schools, and this was my first insight into being in an Aboriginal community and feeling like a total outsider in another culture, and this is in my own state, in my own country. So that was a real insight into Aboriginal culture, and I guess being working between two different cultures, being in a Western institution and looking at white ways of doing things, and then also Aboriginal knowledges and different ways of approaching education and learning. Karina Lester in her lecture spoke about teaching with the senses, so teaching in a way that's really tactile, explorative, with the eyes, the ears, the hands. And for me, this was evident in Yalata, working with the kids up there. We got out of the classroom a lot. We worked in ways that were involving the body in our learning. So I think that's really important, and not just for Aboriginal students, but also for any students. So as a teacher, I will make sure that I include many different ways of working towards the end goal. So we're having this similar end goal, but lots of different ways to get there. Sam Osborne's lecture was really inspiring. I read a few of his papers before I went up to Yalata, and he talks about working with Anangu families and what they want their children to learn. And I think as an educator, well, for me, working outside the class, looking outside the classroom and engaging with community members, Aboriginal families and elders to find what they want their kids to learn. So we're working with the community and listening to what Aboriginal people want their children to learn and the ways that they want them to learn. For me, also, I think working with Aboriginal students, we have to have place-based pedagogies. That was talked about also in Sam Osborne's paper, so really relevant to the specific context of the school that we work in. So they're not just Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students, but they are from the Anangu students, they're Paramount, they're Ngarrindjeri, and really get specific about what part of Australia they're from, and yeah, honing in on that, being more specific, because there's 250 languages in Australia, so let's teach our students about that part of Australia. So in terms of working with EALD students, I think having, again, looking at the classroom, looking at them as an asset to the classroom, and sharing all our different, our linguistic diversity in the classroom. We need to draw on the cultural capital of the students, so infuse the classroom with that cultural capital, and find, again, the same way, find many different ways of reaching the same goal. And to do this, modifying the learning, giving students a chance to express something in their first language first and then English, looking at the nuances and the different flavours of English, accents and dialects, and how this might infuse English. I also think working with EALD students, another thing that's been really powerful for me in these 2 weeks is thinking about the tools of language. So how we can recognise when students don't have the language. We need to equip them with the tools so they can powerfully and capably express themselves in English. So that means being really explicit with things that they don't know, not just language but also culture. So teaching the codes of power, as Delpit talks about, being in the culture of the dominant culture. We often don't see our privilege, but looking outside of that and reflecting on the minority groups and giving them the tools so they can to express themselves in the language of power. Again, this is like teaching them specific language choices, teaching them about the tenor of dialogue, so really explicit teaching. So again, they have those tools to step up and have the same voice as first language speakers. Another thing that has been amazing thinking about these last 2 weeks is language variation and change, and thinking about the ways that language is always evolving, and the different ways language is used in different settings, different social cultural groups, and being aware of that and how we can draw on those linguistic resources. For finally, I want to reflect upon the 2 weeks in the classroom. So the space that David created, and which was one a real community of learners. And I think working with diversity is diverse learners, that is so important, and it creates a space where everyone feels equal and has their voice heard, where they feel safe to try new things out, and where they can create a space where they can learn from their peers as well as each other, and the teacher should be a facilitator of that space. So I feel with working with all of these different pedagogies, I feel really confident to now step into a classroom and take on all that diversity with open arms.